Yo, this is Postman and welcome back to the channel. My latest EP, Overly Elaborate Track Titles, is out now on Billegal Beats and was inspired by Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Each track covers one of my favorite archetypes to pilot in Master Duel, one for each attribute. I'm doing a track walkthrough for each of these tracks. In this video, I will explain the inspiration and show some highlights of Psychic Punk Extreme Iwato Gagaku session. Let's dive in. This track is a node to my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Archetype, Punk. As the name suggests, this archetype is based on flashy punk visual art and traditional Japanese arts. This mix of old and new showcases ukiyo-e, Japanese woodblock art, gagaku, Japanese chord music, joruri, musical puppet theater, and no, Japanese drama theater. The archetype is strong on its own, but extremely useful when combined with other archetypes. I love the flashy style so much, I just had to incorporate it into this EP. Some of you might know that I originally came from a metal and hardcore background. I still own a guitar and play on it every day. This track is somewhat of a throwback to that. It started as a sketch for another project in which I tried to blend electronica with hardcore, groove and death metal influences. It rapidly shifted to a more neo-Japanese sound while jamming around and grew into a full-blown Postman track. The mystical vibe and Japanese sound reminded me of the punk archetype, so I designated it the spell attribute in a homage to the punk field spell, Punk Jam Extreme Session. Now, let's get to some highlights. As I said, this track started as something for a more guitar-oriented project. The important thing to note here is that none of the guitars you hear in this track are real. Heck, the main riff is nearly impossible to play even by a seasoned guitarist, which I'm honestly not. The main guitar setup is an emulation of a double recording, which is done often in metal, done with this plugin, Odin 2. Both the left and right channels, which play ever so slightly different, go through the archetype Gojira amp simulator from Neural DSP for some crunchy tone, and through the X502 emulating a bottom-heavy cabinet. I've recorded the audio through an instance of Infiltrator and switched between different presets while it was playing. To tame the madness I just spawned, I chopped up the result to make it fit better with the track. The riff played by the guitars originally came from a random sequence generator. I've ran it through MIDI chord effects, arpeggiators, and finally through the scale effect set on the Iwato scale in the root of E. The Iwato scale is a pentatonic scale used in Japanese music, often for Dikoto. You could regard it as a pentatonic version of the Locrian mode. They not only share a similar build-up, but are hard to use in a classic harmony-based structure. The riff in the drop is obviously reminiscent of the main riff from Bleed, the track of Meshuggah, although it's heavily simplified. The sound in the intro verse seemed to crack every time the snare hits. I achieved that because I've used some DC offset. You can also hear it in the intro riff fading in. You can clearly see it here in this neon yellow track. The waveform is not centered around the minus infinite line, the zero crossing, but shifted up. That's what you call offset, and is normally not desired as it messes with the alignment and shift of audio that is played together with it. but here I used it as an aesthetic choice. It takes a bit of fiddling to generate offset though. First, I rendered operator with one square oscillator and no filter playing a low C, which I already prepared here. I then chopped up a really tiny flat part of the waveform above the zero crossing. I stretched that snippet out to the max and duplicated as much as I needed it. In the sample or clip view, I can change the amount of offset by using the clip gain. And when played together with another sound, it creates that nasty offset distortion. You must be sick of hearing me talking about gating, but I again have used it in multiple ways here. I'm gating the volume of different bands of this bass sound with the use of the envelope MIDI device on a separate track. Here I'm gating a pad in a similar fashion. And here I'm technically not gating, but I'm chopping up a sample so it sounds like it's gated heavily. And finally, the sidechain trigger for the snare is mitigating the width of the whole master track. So each time the snare in the drop is triggered, the master stereo image is almost reduced to mono. It's hard to see on Visualizer and also hard to hear, but it definitely gives the drop a distinct crunch to me. So it's not gating volume, but stereo width. Don't ask why. Okay, we're almost done with the track walkthroughs for this EP. Again, I want to thank you for watching. Thanks to Billegal Beats for making this release possible. See you next time.